Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Krystel Clear. I have a very special guest today, Dr. Sidney Turner. She is the founder of Resilient Retreat and many more beautiful things. That's how we'll introduce her today. Thank you for being here, Sidney.
Thank you for having me. What a huge honor, seriously.
I feel like probably every episode I've mentioned Resilient Retreat in some way, shape, or form. But it's because it's been such a pivotal part of this most recent journey that I've been on. So those have been chiming in for every episode will definitely understand the importance of you being here. So thank you so much. And I've mentioned it, that it's just such a beautiful organization. And for those of you who are chiming in for the first time, I will allow Dr. Turner to give us a little bit more information. What is Resilient Retreat?
Yeah, so Resilient Retreat's one place where people can go who've been impacted by trauma to kind of have a one-stop shop of all these different evidence-based services. So we offer things like equine therapy, neurofeedback, art and music classes. We have a therapy dog named Journey, and then a lot of support groups and various different book clubs and all these different modalities that people can use to help heal their trauma. And the great thing about Resilient Retreat is we're on 84 acres of conservation land, so nature is a big piece of everything we do, as well as all of our services are free and confidential. And people were like, "You're nuts. You can't offer these services for free." But the number one reason why people don't get access to mental health support is because of cost. And how do we make our services accessible to the community? We offer them for free because it's hard enough to take that first step in the door, and removing the barrier of finances allows people to more easily take that first step.
Absolutely. And that's something that I personally really admire about it because, I was one of those people. It's like, I don't know where to start. And then you tell your doctor about it. Then they want to try to give you medication. And it's like, but I don't want the medication. I want more a holistic approach. So that's one of the things that because I've personally taken the programs and now getting involved in a little different way. But I have found that they are just something about the confidentiality part of it too. Like, I know I've referred a lot of people. I don't know if they've ever gone or not. Some of them will share that they have, but just knowing that that's a safe place. In our company, we have an EAP and things like that, but it's like, this is different. And even from the enrollment process for myself, it was just actually, it's really humbling to do the screening process because it's like, wow, I was thinking of big trauma, but some of the questions, it's like, wow.
A lot of little T traumas.
I think we've all experienced a little bit of this.
Totally.
I was actually talking to a girlfriend today, and she said her mom had done a tour and whatnot, and I think their company is going to do a retreat there, but then her daughter was interested, and she's like, Mom, this sounds really interesting. I think that, well, you can't go. It's for people that have survived trauma. And I'm like, well, Mom, but you never know. Let her scream, let her do her thing. But we kind of chuckled because she's like, well, that means I definitely need to go.
For sure. And a lot of us experience trauma in the workplace, right?
Right.
Like we see and witness trauma in our roles as helpers. And so that's another great aspect of Resilient Retreat is we help the helpers so that they can have a moment of reprieve to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. And that was something actually, with Wells this past week, we went to this underserved elementary school in Pensacola, and we got to partner with a couple of our different charitable partners and really serve every kid in the school and give them a brand new pair of shoes. And it just reminded me when I was working hands-on with the kids in nonprofits, like how much I soaked in of their little energy. Like I wanted to take them all home. Like it was just so much. So I love that it's geared towards first responders and helping professions because that's something that, we think it's just part of life and we take it home. And then what do? We have to block it out somehow. So we shut down or find different coping mechanisms or don't find coping mechanisms. And then it trickles into our family life. It's a whole broad range of all the things. And in talking about all of that, I'm curious as to if you will share some of your, how did you get into this? What was your inspiration behind such a brilliant idea and a beautiful facility?
Yeah, so I remember sitting in my high school class and not really sure what I was going to do with my life. My original hope was to be a vet, but I started taking physics and chemistry and was not doing very well. And I'm like, okay, this if I can't do this in high school, how am I going to become a vet and do this? So I was feeling kind of lost, and I'm sitting in my psych class, and the first day I sat down, I was like, this is what I meant to do. It just like clicked,
Yeah.
just clicked for me in that moment. And as I went through my training in psychology and I learned more about psychology, I just realized that like really everything stems back to trauma. It
Right.
really is like the common denominator
Mhm.
in the field of psychology. It really like all mental health disorders pretty much, unless you have like a traumatic brain injury or something, most of the time result from some kind of trauma that you've experienced. And sometimes an interaction of biology as well. So I really found like a calling for it naturally, but I also, in going through my own education, realized just how much trauma that I had
Mhm.
and how much suffering I was going through. And so I went through my own journey of like trying out all the different modalities. You know, I tried different therapies, I tried medications, I even participated in several research studies at universities, like trying new innovative treatments with computers and all kinds of different things. And the bottom line is I wasn't getting better.
Right.
And that really scared me because how am I going to do the work that I feel so passionate about and live the life that I know that I can when I'm suffering so much? I had such a severe case of PTSD that, like, if someone were to tap me on the shoulder and be like, hey, I would just turn into a deer in the headlights, just stare, and then maybe 30 seconds later scream and have no control over my body. It was like absolutely terrifying to
Wow.
feel trapped in your own body like this. And so that's when I got the diagnosis of treatment resistant PTSD, which really means the doctor saying we don't really know how to help you.
Oh my gosh.
And that was scary. And so at the time I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? I got this treatment resistant PTSD. I'm trying to get my doctorate degree in psychology. Like, how am I going to juggle these things? I'm like, well, I just kind of need to pick me up right now. I used to do dance as a kid. Why don't I go back to dance? I haven't been in a while. And then I said, you know what? I also like to do yoga as a kid. Why don't I start doing yoga again? And within a couple months of doing that, I started noticing all of those regulation body based reactions minimizing greatly, going down like 80%, which
Right.
is weird. All those years of therapy and all the
Mhm.
medications and all these experimental things had not moved my needle in terms of the body base. Yes, there
Right.
was the therapeutic aspect where I needed to address all of that side of like
Right.
the mental and cognitive aspect, but there was a body change that had happened to me that no amount of therapy and medication was going to be able to fix. And I was blown away that just in like 3, 4 short months, I was seeing that kind of improvement. And I thought, I think I've come upon something. And so, anyways, long story short, I tried a bunch of different modalities. It wasn't just dance and yoga, but I found a nice grouping of things that really got me to the point where, knock on wood, I've been years now without PTSD. And
Wow.
so, just knowing what that process is like, and even me getting my doctorate in psychology, I was struggling to navigate the system. How does the everyday person feel like trying to navigate this stuff? And that's kind of where the idea of Resilient Retreat was born is, well, I've lived through this. Let's create a space where we have all these evidence-based modalities in one place that people can try. And again, dance is not for everybody.
Right.
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all panacea for everybody. There isn't. Everyone's journey is unique, and let's help you find whatever that mixture that's going to work for you.
Oh my gosh. First of all, thank you for sharing. I don't even think I knew half of that stuff, which I love. Like, this is what's so fun about this. You get to learn something new about everyone. Um, what an incredible story. And, I can totally relate from, different ways that I've tried to. And movement was a huge thing for me. I was a gymnast when I was younger, but kind of in and out of that. But I always knew like running, using my body because I would feel it. You would get the sweats, and now knowing that it was trauma responses, and it was just like my limbic system overacting, but knowing I could get out and take a run, or I could sing a song and dance around my room like a crazy person with the door
Yeah.
locked when there was adult parties going on outside. Like that was my way of escaping in some ways. And it's interesting. That's kind of how I stumbled upon Resilient Retreat. Honestly, I've been super open about this, especially the past 3 or so years. I tried a bunch of different modalities. And I remember saying to one of my girlfriends, like, I wish I could just create a space that had all of this stuff in one. Well, a girlfriend called me one day and she's like, hey, Krystel, this is like all you. They're having this big event. You have to go tour. And that's how it all started. You know, I went, I toured, I heard all about it, the beautiful things that you guys offered, and just loved the holistic approach. Because, like you said, it's not one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of people reach out to me, even since I've started the podcast, like, hey, how can you help me? And the reason I formed this new Krystel Clear business as empowerment coaching is, you know, I will help provide the resources for you.
Yeah.
Like, I am not equipped in my own journey still to be anyone's therapist, nor do I have really the desire to at all. That's not the route I want to take, but I would love to empower you, give you the resources, like I got the resources to do whatever that may be, whether it be a resilient retreat or talk therapy or journaling or whatever, wherever it takes them. And it was, you know, it was just beautiful. I remember going to lunch with you and meeting you for the first time and literally pouring my heart, my trauma, like it all just came out. Because I think deep down I felt that you could relate.
Totally.
Without knowing that you could relate. But I just put it all out there. And then it was like, would you like to be a part of it? And I mean, and for me, really accepting, it was such a validation for me to have my journey validated in a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, you've gone through all of this, but that's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But I see where you're going,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to be a part of where we're going. So again, I'm probably going to cry now, but from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate, you know, all the things.
But that's the beauty. So many people
Right.
pass the torch for me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I pass the torch, and then you pass the torch.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it all.
Right.
And I wanted to say too, what I love about what you're doing, Krystel, is you're bringing your lived experience in to share with others. And I
Right.
feel like sometimes the knowledge we gain from our lived experience gets discounted. It's like, no, you have to listen to a doctor. You have to, you know, follow only this person's expertise. But I think we've forgotten the value of learning through lived experience. And I can tell you, as someone with a doctorate, I learned way more in my lived experience than I ever learned in my degree program. And not to minimize getting education and the value of that, but there's something important in that. And I feel like if all of us with lived experiences can come together and pass those torches on to each other, that's how we make a better world, because there's never going to be enough doctors.
No.
There's never going to be enough therapists alone to address this problem. We all have to work on it together as a community.
I love that. And that's the entire point of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's just putting stuff out there that could resonate with people, uplifting stories of transformation and healing, and sometimes not so uplifting stories, just to let people know that it's okay not to be okay all the time.
Totally.
You know, and that's one thing I've realized, and prior generations would be like, I can't believe you're talking about all of your personal life. Well, like, I don't care. Like, it's not just my life. Like, a lot of people are experiencing these things, and they need to hear that they have the power within them to get through it. And if they don't have that power, which we all don't at times, then there's resources out there for them. So it's really been a blessing how it's all come together, and I'm very excited about it. And yeah, so it's super exciting. So thank you for saying that, because I'm a firm believer in the lived experiences.
Yeah.
You know,
and don't ever discount that, because
right.
that's what we don't have enough of.
Right.
We don't have enough of us with lived experiences coming forward and sharing what we've learned. And again, knowing that our lived experience may not be theirs,
Right.
but maybe there's a kernel out of it that they can, and at least even if their journey is very different than ours, at least we can understand what it feels like to be on that journey and provide validation and support along the way.
Absolutely. Because I think that that's something, even in my, prior to understanding what Resilient Retreat was and having the opportunity to come on board and everything, I knew my life experience had value. And I'm like, I have a lot to offer people. And I have a lot, like, this voice, like my throat chakra was like dying. Like, I really need to open up. I really need to share all of this. But it's like you doubt yourself, because it's like, well, I don't have a doctorate, or I don't have that, you know, but that's okay. Like, you don't need a lot of, you know, titles to have validation and accreditation and like true intrinsic motivation to really make a difference in other people's life, or your own life, or whatever. So,
and that's how change happens, you know?
Right. And just those little trickles, it's like the glimmers, like the little glimmers in every day, and just checking in. And I've always found myself to be a very empathetic, intuitive person. And I think that that's what caused a lot of me staying in some of my PTSD patterns is because I could feel the energy around me. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like I'll today called my first nanny, and it's like, we just have this. I always find that we have these interesting connections with people that come into our lives.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's something that I've always found very interesting. That's kind of led me into more of this like energy healing route and understanding that, we have trauma trapped in our body. Like it's not
Mhm.
just trapped in our mind, it's
Mm-mm.
trapped in our body. So when you're talking about the dance and ways to get that out, and it's so real.
Totally.
And it's stuff that you can do at home and stuff, it's, yeah. So,
And I think because our fields, it's like our knowledge base has gotten so big that everyone's become super specialized. Like you see
right.
it in medicine, like you
Yeah.
have to go to this specialist, this specialist, this specialist. And then we've done that with psychology where we kind of parse out the mind separate as if like we carry our mind in a suitcase behind us. No, it's
Right.
in the same vessel
Right.
as the rest of our body and it's actually connected to our spinal cord. And
Right.
so of course, like if your health isn't good, then your mental health will be impacted. If your mental health's not good, then your physical health, because they're not separate. Just because we've specialized things so much doesn't mean that they're not interconnected. And I feel like we're starting to talk more about that.
Right.
But it used to be like, I'm a doctor, I'm over here, a medical doctor, I'm over here, I don't deal with that psych stuff.
Right.
Those psych cases.
Right.
And then psychologists are like, oh, I only deal with mental health. You have a physical health problem, you got to go over there.
Right. And I do feel like that's something that I'm excited because I feel like our generation is branching out and doing more all encompassing. And we're kind of, laying out that playing field a little bit better, which I'm excited about. Like medical doctors, and because I go to an acupuncturist and do functional medicine stuff. And I was talking to my son's pediatrician, and she's like, actually, when I was in California many years ago, we collaborated with the acupuncturist and we did, it was the all encompassing. It was a little bit of Western, a little bit of Eastern. And I was like, I love that. So just not a one size fits all for anyone.
No.
So, having Resilient Retreat being what it is today on this beautiful acreage and everything that we're offering, thinking back to when you had that idea. Tell me a little, like, how does that feel to you? Like, what are the, I'm sure it's probably way different than you envisioned it being. And so what is kind of what your initial feelings for what you wanted and what it's transpired into be? And so I'm just kind of curious as to what that looks like for you.
Yeah, that's a really great question because, you have this germ of an idea. And I always say starting Resilient Retreat was like starting a garden where I planted the first seed and then there were thousands of people behind me that planted seeds. And so the garden turned out way different than I could have. Yes, I helped create the plot of land for the garden to grow, but like thousands of people behind me came in and brought their own seeds. And so I look at what Resilient Retreat is today and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's even more beautiful and better than I would have even dreamt of myself, because all of these people have come in and brought their voices and their perspective, and it's just absolutely amazing to see. I mean, just the facility is bigger than I ever could have imagined it to be. The land is bigger than I could have ever imagined it to be. Our program scope, I mean, we're just moved into our building and we're doing 30 programs a month. I mean, it's busy, and several retreats, sometimes a month. It's been super busy. And then we have a whole training program that I never even envisioned of like going out in the community. I just did those things naturally. I have a background in teaching, so I would automatically just go out in the community and start sharing this information. But it's just unbelievable that we have this entire training program, and then we also have this entire rental property that will, hopefully blossom to be able to support our mission so we can continue offering our services at no cost. So I don't know. I have to say it's awe-inspiring, surreal, and I am most blown away by how many people have connected with our mission and have shared stories like you have. I mean, if I could tell you how many thousands of people have come to me saying, I had that experience too. I'm like, wow, I had no idea that, I mean, I knew it was a problem, but you don't know the magnitude of the problem until you have thousands of people saying, that's my story too. And you're like, wow.
And the fact that may have been the first time that person ever said anything in their 80s. The first time they ever had the courage to say something about it is because we are normalizing it and making that vulnerability a beautiful part of the journey. Is just, it's okay. And you're not alone. And I think people just knowing that they're not alone, even if they're not, let's face it, life is a journey. We're going to be healing until the day we're no longer here, and depending on what different aspects of life come up and the twists and turns of every day. But it's just, that's the beauty of it to me, is just exposing that. I mean, I've had that since you've been doing the podcast, so I can imagine the overwhelm. And also, how do you protect your own energy in all of this? Because that's a big deal. I've had to really learn my boundaries and how to kind of protect myself in my own journey and with the healing, and, not oversharing, not giving too much information, so how do you find that what helps you kind of set your own pace?
I think one thing I wasn't totally prepared for was what they call founder syndrome, which is this unique dynamic that you experience as founder. Like I said, I just planted the first seed, and there were many people behind me that planted, but then you often get credited for things that you didn't necessarily create. And then sometimes you're the face, and there's pressures that come with that, And so I think really on my journey, the same tools I use to get through PTSD, my journaling, my writing, my arts and crafts, my dance, yoga, have all been like key pieces. And then just surrounding yourself with a really good community of people that are there for you and support you. Shout out to my husband, Troy, who's been amazing advocate and support along the way. We went on a date 15 years ago, and he sat down. It's our first date. And I was like, okay, so that I just want you to know 2 things about me. And he's like, oh boy, okay. I'm like, first of all, I am moving to go to graduate school. We were in San Diego at the time, California. And I'm like, I'm moving to go to graduate school. It'll probably be on the other area of the country. I don't know yet because I haven't gotten in. The acceptance rate for these programs is really challenging. So you really don't know where you're going to end up. And then I was like, and the other thing is I'm starting a nonprofit. So if that is like not okay with you, because it's going to be busy, and there'll probably be times that I'm going to need a supportive partner to help me along the way. And he was like, oh, that sounds great, I'm in. And so I mean, it's wild. He always tells everybody that, like, Sidney sat down with me 15 years ago, and boy was she right. We ended up moving from San Diego all the way to New Hampshire, which was a total culture shock for both of us. And then moved down to Sarasota and started Resilient Retreat, and it's just wild to see.
I love that. And you guys are like the sweetest, best couple. You really are. I mean, you're really made for each other. I remember asking him one time, he did my neurofeedback, and asked him, like, who loses their shit in your situation? Like, you guys are just always so nice and loving and giving to everyone. And you do. You just really, and you're genuinely like that. You can tell when people are schmoozing. You're not schmoozers at all. So you guys really hit the jackpot with each other. You did. It's like, it's a perfect match. And I love that he is kind of your partner in all this. And he's, it's been great. It's been great to see and great to get to know you guys better. And it's like family, like the whole Resilient Retreat network. Like once you've done a program or volunteered for a program or been to an event, like it becomes your family. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And trust me, we have our moments of disagreements. We do, just like every couple.
I know.
But I have to say he's like absolutely my best friend. Yeah. And, having that great support system around me is really key to my resiliency moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely is. That's the key, is having that core foundation of people and your modalities that you can turn to in the moments where you're like, oh, and knowing your worth with it. You might get the credit sometimes, but you know what? It was your idea. So accept that and own that and love that, and that's one of my biggest things. It's like, well, I don't, deserve credit for this, but, but it's like, but still you had a part in it, and that's okay. And, and, love it. And I always flip that for myself with gratitude. Like if
Totally.
I'm having some worthiness stuff going on, I'm like, I'm just grateful that someone would recognize whatever. It's just
Mhm.
flip it to gratitude. And I feel like that changes everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for me, it's just important for the community to know that Resilient Retreat is theirs,
Right.
not mine.
Right. Well, exactly.
And just making sure that that's clear. It's not the Sydney show at Resilient Retreat.
Yeah.
Resilient Retreat's really for them and it's driven by them, even though
Right.
I had some ideas. And I always have
Right.
ideas, but
Absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, I think anyone that's ever been involved knows that firsthand. Like, we all know that firsthand. So, but thank you for the idea because it's been a beautiful blessing for everyone. And we have people in Scotland,
Oh, all
Mexico,
over.
like, so that's one thing. It's not just local Sarasota, it's global now.
Yeah, we are
So, do you
global.
know some of the places off the top of your head? I don't remember Scotland and Mexico.
I mean, I think we've had all 50 states at this point. About half of our programs are virtual.
Yeah.
So, we do get people from all over the world now. And some of our participants are kind of, travelers. They
Mhm.
like to go all over. So I
Right.
wish I could say every country that
Right.
I knew, but,
Yeah.
some of our participants are world travelers and
Yeah.
they go, to Thailand or,
That's
wherever
so fun. And
next.
just
So
chime into a program from somewhere that counts.
I know. So it's so fun just to see people from all over the world come in and say, I connect with this mission and I want to be part of this community.
Awesome. It was actually a really, even in the past couple months, been a really great full circle for me because as my community outreach and philanthropy coordinator position at Bell's,
Yeah.
we did this big event last week, like I spoke about earlier, serving a school, collaborating with Derek Brooks Charities and Souls for Souls.
Mhm.
But then, like above and beyond that, I was able to have a conversation with the principal and be like, I have a really wonderful organization for your faculty
Oh,
because
that's
these children,
great.
I mean, it's 100% free lunch. The children have experienced serious trauma, neglect. There's, I think, over 30 homeless children. It's a lot going on at that school, which is why it really pulled that's his hometown. So it really pulled his heartstrings
Mm.
to be involved. And it just kind of came up in conversation like, wow, we should really Souls for Souls. They do this thing with shoes. And then I'm like, a Resilient Retreat. And he was all on board for all of it. He's like, this is great.
Oh, that's
That you have all these
wonderful.
resources. So for me personally, just knowing that Resilient Retreat was out there to be a resource for these teachers who are working with these children on a daily basis and, going and seeing them. And you could tell the ones that it really pulled my heartstrings at one point. A certain class walked in the door and I could tell it was very overstimulating for them. It was a lot. I mean, we
Mhm.
were in one gym. There was fitters, there were, runners for shoes. It was big, it was loud, it was noisy, and I could just tell, I felt the energy shift when the kiddos walked in the door. I'm like, you know what? If they want to
Mm.
wait outside,
Mm.
I'll grab their sizes from inside and run them outside. And just
That's
having
great.
that level of awareness
Yeah.
that prior to my own healing, I wouldn't have been able to pinpoint that as easily. I would have been like, oh, these kids have behavioral problems. No, like they're
Mm.
just really overwhelmed and this is a lot for them. And so just it really made me grateful for my own healing experience, learning how to understand those trauma responses or that sensory kind
Mhm.
of disconnect there when they even just I felt it when they walked in the door. So that was really great. And then we did an event in Port Charlotte
Mhm.
for families in transition, so essentially homeless families. And I was able to connect their school system to Resilient Retreat. So it's just been a really, in my other positions, my other waves of life, just being able to, it's just one of those years where everything's tying together. So it really just fills my heart to know that it's out there, whether it's a training that they get to
Mhm.
experience um, or just programming for the teachers. I actually had another person reach out from a nonprofit we're involved in, and they deal with children with exceptionalities. And he's like, I really want something for the parents. These parents
Yeah.
need to, because it's a lot for them. So again,
Yeah.
connected with our crew. And it's like, what can we do for them? Even if it's something we sponsor and they
Yeah.
can contribute. So it's just been really great to let people know that those resources are out there.
And I love, well, first of all, I love that you're sharing your story about this because I think most people would think of your profession and what you do and think, oh, well, that's different than like a firefighter or a
No.
nurse or a teacher. No, you see this stuff directly too. So, and we've even had calls from bankers or
Yeah.
librarians, right? Think
Mhm.
about like what the things that librarians can see. So,
Yeah.
sometimes helpers aren't always who we think of first of mind. So I'm glad you share your story, because I think there's many people in professions that are like, oh no, I'm not a helper. Well, if you're feeling,
Right.
like you said, like my heartstrings pulling and feeling like that sense of, almost like vicarious trauma that
Mm-hmm.
you're witnessing in these other
Right.
people, then you are a helper.
Right.
Even if your job title might not seem like you're a helper. So I think that's important to mention. And then you talked about your personal journey and how that's influenced you in the workplace. And a lot of people ask, why do we serve people with personal traumas and professional traumas, and shouldn't those be separate? Well, again, if we carried our personal and professional in separate suitcases, but we don't,
Yeah.
and our personal impacts our professional and our professional impacts our personal. It
Right.
all does. So it is important to think about addressing both sides of the coin, because it's
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, I mean, that's super important because when you really go down through it, and I've been through the screening process, but the questions they answer, like we mentioned before, like I feel like everyone has either witnessed vicariously or
Mhm.
firsthand some sort of trauma, abuse. They've been a helping profession in some way. They've been, some sort of first responder. I mean, I feel like any parent's been some sort of first responder at some point.
Totally. Or a helper at
Or
some
a helper. I mean, so it's been really interesting because some people will just, I don't know, that might not be for me. I'm like, you never know.
Yeah,
You never know.
you never
But it's a
know.
great resource to have. And but I'm interested outside of Resilient Retreat.
Yeah.
How do you like to spend your time? Like, what's your life like? I know that you just kind of live this whole healing life. So I'm intrigued to hear about that if you're willing to share some details.
Yeah. So outside of Resilient Retreat, I do have a consulting business that I do research on the side of. So it's really fun to right brain, left brain,
Hmm.
to use the more creative side and then the more data driven side. So I do that. But for fun in my personal life, Troy and I love to check out restaurants in the area. We have 6 pets, including a desert tortoise and a dog that's blind and in diapers. So our pets are like a very big part of our life. We're going through the process of adopting right now, so I'm really excited about that. And I love to dance. I'm very creative. I love to do arts. Like anytime there's a craft, I actually started a program at Resilient Retreat called Just Crafting Around, because I just love crafts and it's such a big part of my life. I love to sew, and not much of like a drawer or a painter, but I can take anything and make it into something else. I
Right.
love scrapbooking and collages and sewing. And so I just love to create things. It's just always such a fun part. And then, being with my husband and all my
Yeah.
friends and family.
Awesome. Love that. Thanks for sharing
Of
that.
course.
Um, yeah, I'm really grateful you're here.
Thank you.
You're a really special spirit in our community and personally to me. And it's really heartwarming to see the work that you're doing and inspiring other people to do and getting those messages out there. And it flows in everything you do in your life and the people that you surround yourself with. And that's something that Matt actually mentioned on the podcast that we did together. He's like, you've always had this intrinsic motivation to be the best version of yourself, and you only want to surround yourself by those types of people. And I think that in part of my journey, I got into a point where I wasn't feeling like I was the best version of myself.
Mm.
And I wasn't feeling like I was surrounding myself by people who were necessarily trying to do that realm as well.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. And for me in my journey, a sense of community. And I think that's what Resilient Retreat and just knowing new people and just and being open to the flow of life and the things that have come in, whether it be new healing modalities or new people and friends or opportunities. It's just allowing yourself to be open and those fun, positive interactions
Yeah.
coming through.
And I think it's more important too that we all start sharing our stories,
Right.
especially us in the helping fields, because I feel like we never expect our doctors to not get sick,
Right.
but we expect our mental health professionals to not have mental health concerns,
Right.
and so and then it sets this like power dynamic of like, I'm the expert and you're down here. And I'd like to see mental health, not that experts don't have input, they do, but to get more like this, because
Mhm.
yes, you have the expertise of general field knowledge, but the person who has the most expertise about them is the person.
Right.
And how can I work together with you to, help you move to that next chapter in your life? How can I walk side by side with you, not in front of you and not behind you? And I think that that's really important. And also knowing, I always say there is no healed, at least for me in my journey.
Mhm.
It's healing.
Oh,
And
constantly.
it's a journey and it's not a destination.
Right.
And I'm always peeling back new layers of the
Yeah.
onion. Every year I'm thinking, okay, I think I've peeled all the layers. And then there's another one. And so I love that people are starting to talk, they're calling it shadow work. And I
Yeah.
love that people are starting to
love it.
talk about this stuff
Yeah.
now, because it's so great. This is how we really make a more positive community, where we don't just react to things. We're
Mhm.
very intentional, and we have awareness that it's not, when someone flips us off when we're driving, it has less to do with us and more to do
Yeah.
with their state of mind in that
Right.
moment. And so it's just so exciting to see. And I love that you are, joining this community. It's going to take a village to
Yeah.
do this work. And I can't thank you enough for being part of that village.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the whole, Krystel Clear, I was walking one day and podcast came to mind. And then I'm like, I'll do a podcast. So I always wanted to write a book, but that felt like a lot to me. The thought of writing a book was like overwhelming to me. I was like, oh, so podcast, perfect. Like I get to talk to people. I get to interact with people. I love people. I love communicating and just networking and understanding more. Like I was that little kid that would talk to the old people at parties and be like, what was your childhood like? Like, what was your life like? I've always been very intrigued by human health and behavior. And then after they told me some stories, and I'd be like, oh, wow, well, that's why they probably act this way or react this way or do this or do that. From a really young child, I remember I could put together, hearing stories about my grandfather and his childhood. And I'm like, well, that's why he does this. And,
Exactly.
I would just be able to connect these dots in such a phenomenal way. And then when I started going inward with myself, it was like, well, that's why this happens. And that's why, you have kids and it's like doing it for them. And it's like, oh, well, that is probably a direct effect of my behavior for my kids. So it's just really been intriguing to learn. And like you said, it's healing. Like it's completely healed. And I'll get to a place, and mind you, there is a place in your healing journey where you have to take breaks.
Oh, yes.
I've gotten to places where I'm like, okay, I'm probably one book too many right now, and I just need to take a breather and allow it to soak in. And I kind of feel like I'm getting there now. Actually, you gave me a phenomenal book, Heal Your Wounds. I loved it. And I probably sent it to like 10 people because that's just what I do when I find something new that I love. And I was like, I need to come on with some of these books that I really love and just do a 20-minute podcast about them and just, talk about them, because there's so much intriguing information to share, and you just take what you want from it and go from there. But that one was a huge kind of eye-opening one for me.
But I love you're talking about the waves, because I feel like there's this pressure to always be on this upward trajectory, and it's like, no, you have to take breaks and honor and listen to your body. Remember, you are the expert of you. And so when you feel ready for breaks, and I got to take them too all the time, and sometimes too, life circumstances happen that get us dysregulated. And again, not judging ourselves. What's wrong with me? I thought I healed. It's like, no, life can be challenging sometimes, and it can kind of push us down. And really, resiliency is about our ability to bounce back or bounce forward. And so, taking those breaks when we need them, knowing that it's not a destination, it's a journey, and that you don't have to do it alone is key.
Exactly. I had one of those moments yesterday where it was like I got up, I went to teach my class. I teach a group exercise class on Sundays, and I went to Whole Foods, and I came home and I unloaded everything. Then I went out to the pool, and the fountains were on at the pool, and Brody wanted me to get in the pool, and he was all over me in the pool, and the dog's running back and panting. And I'm like, Matt, can you turn the fountains off? I'm overstimulated right now. And he's like, what? He kind of looked at me like I was crying. Like, I'm overstimulated right now. But for me to know
that
I'm overstimulated was key, because it's like having the awareness to know my body. Like, why am I agitated right now? And then I'm like, well, I'm in the luteal phase of my cycle, and my estrogen and testosterone are lifting. But I've done all the research to know why I can find it kind of feeling a funk sometimes, because I want to know. I don't want to feel like, oh my God, I'm digressing, because you can go there if you allow yourself. It's like, no, I'm just a human. At the end of the day, I'm a human, and I'm going to have my moments, but we have to accept those moments and just have awareness to communicate. And I think that's been a huge thing, and especially Matt and I's relationship, communicating with each other. Like, okay, I'm at 5% right now. Can you take over with the little guy?
Yeah.
Like, or I need a minute, and knowing when you need that minute. So like after that, I put him down for a nap, and I went out and I laid on our swing in the yard for like 45 minutes, and just no phone, no book, nothing. I just floated around like a little kid and looked at the trees, and just had some time, because I
so
found
good.
that in that stillness time, like, we don't take a lot of time for that in our world. And I don't always get opportunity for it, but I, even in the car, like, I hardly listen to anything in the car anymore. I don't listen to me. I mean, my kids are in the car, and Tatum likes to listen to music, if you want to call it music. It's kind of crazy. Like, do you feel like this is healthy for your mind? But I used to listen to all the same stuff. I feel old when I talk about that. But just knowing when I need my stillness time has been huge for me in
Yeah.
my own journey.
And giving ourselves permission to not be happy all the time. What is
Right.
happiness without sadness,
Right.
right? If we were just happy all the time, then it wouldn't be happy anymore. It would just be neutral. So
Right.
knowing that life is full of ebbs and flows,
Mhm.
and like you said, instead of judging it, saying,
Right.
I'm overstimulated right now, like, wow, that is amazing.
Yeah,
I feel
it was
like
huge for me. I was like, wow.
90% of Americans struggle with that,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we're not taught that skill. And so that, like, awesome that you caught yourself in that moment, because that's the first step, is awareness.
Right. Because we try to do all the things all at once. And, even going to bed, like TV, like, I don't like to watch TV before I go. Like, there's little things that I've learned that, wow, I used to do that a lot. And it probably really contributed to my mind not being able to shut down,
Yeah.
and to those patterns, and to, like, high intensity exercise. Like, for example, I used to do it 6-7 days a week sometimes, and then realizing, the adrenal fatigue and stuff behind that. And it's like, just taking a walk. You know how therapeutic just taking a
so
walk
nice.
is? Like, with no music, nothing. Sometimes I actually do wear my headphones to muffle out the sound, but we have a pretty quiet neighborhood. But, if it's like if I walk the bridge or something down Sarasota, like, I feel like that area is so crazy now. So I'll wear my headphones, but not listen to anything, just to kind of like mute out the sound a little bit. And it helps me not be so, because that can be overstimulating too. Like, if you're doing activity and then there's a lot of movement or energy flow around you, it's like, those are the things I would have never even noticed 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
and look at that.
Right.
It's amazing. It's
So,
amazing. And it's
my
amazing
little
that you're
win.
finding what's working for you.
Right.
Right? Which is key, right? Because that might not work for me, or might not work for Susie Q, but
Exactly.
you're finding what works for you.
Exactly. So, awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
This was so
welcome.
much fun. Let's do it again.
I think we should do it again too. We'll have to come up with a new topic. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking your time and your energy, and it's been a great conversation. And thank you for sharing some of your personal journey as well as your professional. And it was a pleasure to have you today, Sidney.
Thank you.